December 21st, 1988. Just a few days before Christmas, high above the quiet Scottish town of Lockerbie, Pungham Flight 103 was cruising through the night sky. On board, passengers were settling in, many of them Americans heading home for the holidays. Down below, in Lockerbie, families were wrapping presents and visiting friends. Everything was peaceful, calm, and ordinary. Then, at 7:02 p.m., the night shattered. A massive fireball erupted in the sky. Inside the Boeing 747, a bomb hidden in a suitcase detonated, ripping the aircraft apart in an instant. All 259 people on board were killed. On the ground, Shona Black Harkness was at a friend's house when the building started to shake violently. At first, they thought it was a train, but then the windows exploded inward. When she finally stepped outside, the scene was unreal. The street was littered with aircraft parts, suitcases, and passports. Burning debris was raining from the sky. 11 residents of Lockerbie would die on the ground, crushed by the falling wreckage. What followed was one of the largest and most complex crime scene investigations in history. Investigators immediately suspected it wasn't an accident. The plane hadn't sent a distress call. Witnesses all described a mid-air explosion. Soon, search teams fanned out across the Scottish countryside. Police, soldiers, and thousands of volunteers combed through an area stretching over 2,000 square kilometers. Their instruction was simple. If it's not a rock and it's not growing, collect it. Every piece of wreckage was crucial. Early in the search, they found a twisted, burned piece of metal from a baggage container. Tests revealed traces of a powerful explosive. This was a bombing. The investigation went global. Scottish police and the FBI began the painstaking process of reassembling the aircraft in a massive hangar. The reconstruction became so large that investigators needed bicycles to get around inside. Their work paid off. They pinpointed the blast origin to a single baggage container in the forward cargo hold. Inside that container's wreckage, they found fragments of a brown Samsonite suitcase. And within those fragments, a tiny piece of evidence no bigger than a fingernail. A circuit board. This was the timer. Investigators traced it to a type used in bombs hidden inside Toshiba radios. Chillingly, a similar device had been found just 2 months earlier, linked to a Palestinian militant group. The next clue came from clothing fragments found with the suitcase. A shop owner on the island of Malta remembered selling some of those clothes to a man who bought them in a hurry. Without even checking the sizes, he provided a sketch of the buyer. Then came another breakthrough, a second, even smaller fragment of a circuit board. This one was from a special timer made by a Swiss company called Records showed that these timers had been sold exclusively to the Libyan military. All eyes turned to Libya, then led by Muammar Gaddafi and long associated with international terrorism. Investigators zeroed in on 2 Libyan intelligence officers, Abdelbasset al-Megrahi and Lamin Khalifa Fima. Travel records placed Megrahi in Malta just before the bombing. The theory was clear. The bomb was built in Malta, placed on a flight to Frankfurt, and then transferred to Pan Am 103 in London. In 1991, prosecutors charged both men, but Libya refused to hand them over, leading 2 years of international sanctions. Finally, in 1999, Libya relented, and the 2 suspects faced trial in a special Scottish court set up in the Netherlands. After hearing from over 230 witnesses, the court delivered its verdict in 2001. Abdelbasset al-Megrahi was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. His co-defendant, Fima, was acquitted. But the story didn't end there. Many, including Dr. Jim Swire, whose daughter died on the flight, questioned if the evidence was strong enough and if the full truth had been revealed. In 2003, Libya officially accepted responsibility and agreed to pay billions in compensation to the victims' families, though they later claimed this was just to lift sanctions. Then, in 2009, Megrahi was released from prison on compassionate grounds after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. He returned to Libya, Ahiro Tusomian, died 3 years later. The case remained open. In 2020, U.S. prosecutors announced new charges against another Libyan, Abu Aguila Massoud, alleging he was the bomb maker. He was extradited to the U.S. and is now awaiting trial, though he claims his confession was forced. Nearly 4 decades later, the Lockerbie bombing remains a deep wound. It was a tragedy that killed 270 people, devastated a small town, and launched a global investigation that is still shadowed by controversy and unanswered questions. For the families of those lost, the search for complete justice continues. Thanks for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into historical events.